Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We are here with the President of the BIMUN Association, Mr. Nikolas Schmidt.
I'm glad to be here.
And we'll now talk about the conference and these past days in general. Now, first of all, how did the discussions went so far?
Well, I think the discussions are going pretty well. The delegates are very motivated and also very well prepared, even though a lot of first-timers are among them. I think it has to do with the chair board, who is very, very qualified this year. And I think things are going pretty well, yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about one or two committees. The HRC, the Human Rights Council, they deal with refugees. Would you like to talk about the debate so far?
Well, in the Human Rights Council, we're talking about not only refugees, but also internally displaced persons, which is right now a very big issue in the Middle East, especially in Syria, especially with the rising threat of the Islamic State in that area. And as we know, not only do the refugees or the people who are being persecuted, they not only flee to Lebanon and other countries in the region, but also to Europe. So it's an issue which is facing very, very many countries all over the world.
And this also leads to, of course, the conflicts or the challenges of the UN debate or model United Nations, as you have different positions pitted against each other. Would you like to give an example of that?
Well, since the delegates are representing countries and positions which are not their own, they are quite challenged by having to actually represent views which they may not share. For example, we have a couple of delegates from Egypt who are representing the United Arab Emirates and Ethiopia, which have views which the Egyptians might not share. And the same goes for a German who's representing Syria or Iraq, or the same goes for an American who has to represent Germany. So you actually get to be in the position of somebody else, and you get to know a lot of different views.
And this also helps, of course, bringing a different perspective for the delegates and them learning something from this experience.
Well, I'm sure the delegates learn a lot, not only from the preparation, from the content side, but also by getting to know different people from different cultures and experiencing those different cultures themselves.
And especially within the Human Rights Council, delegates have the possibility to talk in 3 different languages, right?
That's correct. The Human Rights Council is trilingual, which is unique in the MUN world. We talk in English, French, and Spanish. And we have a team of interpreters from Cologne who are interpreting all of the languages so that every delegate can speak in their preferred language and they know that the other delegates can understand them.
Right, so a bit about the interpreters. Where do they come from?
Well, they come from the Cologne University of Applied Sciences, and we've actually been cooperating with them since the very beginning of BIMUN, so they've been here for 13 years.
Okay. So within this cultural experience, is there anything you come to think of that might pose a challenge, also as an organization, doing this conference that poses a challenge to you and your board?
Well, we try to have a very diverse and international people at our conference, so very many different nations are being represented, but also the delegates come from very different countries. Obviously, the more international it is, the more the delegates can learn from each other, but of course we don't always have the luck of getting visas for other delegates. Sometimes that is just not possible, but we try our best. And this year we have some delegates from Afghanistan, from Kyrgyzstan. Some of the chairs are coming from very far away, from the United States, India, Algeria. So we are very international.
So putting together this kind of conference surely does cost a lot of money. How does the association work? How do they get their funding?
Well, we have an executive board member who is in charge of fundraising, and the conference is funded mostly by institutions, and both private and public. And we get, we write applications to them explaining how the conference works and what are the benefits of it, and then we can get some of the money from different institutions, for example, the European Union and other institutions which deal with environment and development. A partner which has been always very loyal to us is the Foundation for International Dialogue of the Sparkasse in Köln-Bonn, who are very, very loyal and who have been giving us money for a long time. We're very, very happy with that.
Okay, so BIMUN is essentially a non-profit.
BIMUN is a non-profit organization. All of the people who work for BIMUN do it on a voluntary basis, and they invest a lot of their work with a lot of passion. And well, I thank them very much for doing so.
So how is the association organized? How many members do you have on the board, and how does the team work with that?
This year we're 10 people in the executive board who have been elected in our main assembly last February, and we have about, I think, 90 members at this point. And yeah, it's a registered association, and everything is democratic, and the executive board gets elected and gets entrusted with running the association and organizing the conference.
Beside the conference, there are other events and projects BIMUN President is doing. What are some of them?
Well, the BIMUN President Association does a lot of different things next to the conference. That's saying that the conference is the biggest part of the year and the most important event. But for example, we also organize the United Nations Day or the Day of the European Union together with the city of Bonn, who we also have a partnership with. And next to that, we also entertain a lecture series at the University of Bonn, which deals with the international side of Bonn and international issues leading up to the conference.
So with all these projects and all these people involved, what do you feel are the most important things people can learn here, or what can BIMUN do for these people?
Well, for the delegates, obviously, you can get to know the United Nations, you can get to know different people from diverse social and cultural backgrounds. You learn public speaking as a delegate, you learn how to present yourselves, you learn a lot about political debate and international affairs, but also, of course, for the people who are organizing, the people in the team of BIMUN Zinup, they learn how to deal with responsibility, how to organize such a huge conference, and how to work together in a team and get things done.
So if people wish to work in the United Nations or with the United Nations, what does BIMUN offer to them?
Well, my first conference was the Model United Nations in New York, and our faculty advisor who was preparing us for the conference always said that not everybody who attends an MUN conference ends up becoming a diplomat, but every diplomat has attended an MUN conference. So actually you can say that attending an MUN conference can be a preparation for working in international affairs, but you can just as easily be interested and do something totally different. For example, we in the executive board, we have somebody studying to be a doctor, we have somebody studying to work in aviation, so you don't necessarily need to be a political scientist or a lawyer or an economist to be excited about international relations and take part in an MUN conference.
Well, and you also have the possibility to join the Postprogram of the BIMUN conference.
Yeah, so the Postprogram is an opportunity which we solely have because the city of Bonn is Germany's UN city. There's 19 UN agencies here and other international organizations as well. And our partner, the UNCCD, has offered us the possibility to talk to some of their staff. So the delegates actually get to talk to and share their views with people who work in the UN, who have done the careers that they aspire to, who have the jobs that they would like to have later in their life. And next to the UN, we also have a workshop with the German Foreign Ministry and with the Deutsche Welle, so international media as well.
So how does this association and this conference implement the goals of the United Nations of sustainability and climate neutrality?
So the BIMUN Zinup conference has been a so-called green conference for the past 5 years, which means that we offset all of the emissions caused by the conference as well as by the travels of the participants. We work together with the Forest Finance Group, especially with Cool, and they have several projects in different countries where they do reforestation, which I think is the most promising way to combat climate change. So we also have other different ways of treating sustainability seriously, for example, fairly traded food and coffee, reusable cups, and so on.
So two of the committees that we simulate here at the BIMUN conference are both the ITLOS and the Security Council. These are very different approaches to international politics and to the United Nations. Could you elaborate?
Well, the Security Council is the highest body of the United Nations and thus must have as an MUN. They're discussing right now the situation of Sudan and South Sudan, the border issues, the involvement of the People's Republic of China, and other issues which have arisen so far. That's textbook security policy, geopolitics, and strategy. However, on the other side, the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea, which you mentioned, is a council which deals with international law, There's mostly law students among the delegates, and they're talking about the first case is the case of the South China Sea, where the People's Republic of China is pitted against the Philippines. And obviously, talking about law and international law might seem a little different from talking about politics, but obviously both things are very, very important and need to work together. So we try to get both law and politics together in the simulation and in talking about the issues.
Thanks. So maybe the delegates have noticed, and our viewers at home might also notice that in the background, this is a very special place. Mr. President, would you like to elaborate?
Well, we're in the World Conference Center Bonn here, which is the seat, the former seat of the German Parliament here in Bonn. We have our ceremonies and one of our committees in the former plenary hall of the German Parliament. So that's actually a very inspiring location for us to be here to talk about politics. On the other side, we have the United Nations right next to us, the UN Tower. So both international politics and national politics are very close to our simulation.
And as you might have seen our Newsnight program and with our shows, there were other keynote speakers as well. What do they have for the delegates?
Well, next to the speech by Dr. de Maizière, we also had two speakers so far at our opening ceremony. One from the Deputy Mayor of Bonn, Gabriele Klingmüller, who was talking about the partnership of BIMUN and the city of Bonn and inspired the delegates by quoting a lot of very important public and political figures. And we also had a speaker from our partner at the UN, at the UNCCD, Dr. Richard Byron Cox, who held a speech about democratizing the United Nations, which I think was very challenging and very thought-provoking because it inspired the delegates to not only simulate the United Nations but also think beyond on how to change the United Nations and how to change international policy themselves. So we actually challenged them to share their views and to think outside the box.
And this is certainly one of the goals, one of the aspects of Model United Nations, that we do not only sit here and talk about nice things, but also talk about the different issues and problems within the world and the challenges of today. This is, of course, some critics might say we only sit here and talk, but what would you tell them?
Well, I would say that at Model United Nations conferences, people get to know the United Nations very, very well, and they also learn a lot about international processes, so they actually can appreciate more what the delegates at the actual United Nations do and what politicians do, because they get to experience firsthand how hard compromise can be if you have 190 nations in the room and they need to formulate a resolution or agree on public policy. On the other hand, I think as much as the delegates work on the resolutions themselves, they also can think about how the United Nations works better, or how it can work better, and where the weaknesses are.
Well, then, beside the ITLOS Committee or the Human Rights Council, as we have talked about the Security Council, and one of the most critical points, or one of the most important points about the Security Council is, of course, the veto right of certain nations. What's the problem or the issue with that?
Well, I think the most widespread criticism of the veto powers is that it perpetuates post-World War II power politics, and I think in some way that criticism is deserved, and I agree that we should talk about, or the United Nations should talk about, giving additional veto powers to countries such as India or Brazil. But I also think that the veto power is a very important aspect of Security Council policy because it shows how the United Nations work as a whole. It works through words. Resolutions actually matter. And if the veto powers were to be suspended, countries such as Russia or China, or also the United States, would have to use military veto powers. So actually diplomacy works. Veto power is an important aspect in maintaining peace and security.
So you talk about these upcoming nations, these nations like Brazil, for example. We at the BIMUN conference, of course, have different nations together here. What are some of the countries that delegates come from, or delegations that we have here?
Well, we have very many delegates obviously coming from Germany, but we tend to have a lot of delegates coming from the Middle East this year. We have some from Afghanistan and Lebanon. We have a chair from Algeria and one from Ghana. We have some people coming from Kyrgyzstan, from the United States, from India. It's very diverse, and there are a lot of people from different countries.
Right, so this also leads to, even if these people and their nations don't have the kind of voice in the United Nations, they come here, and these are the future decision makers that learn at MUN conferences and might in the future bring their voices to the United Nations.
Yes, I would agree. The delegates at the BIMUN conference show great promise, and we're very happy that BIMUN can be a step in their career, not only in their Model United Nations career, but also in their future in international politics. And I think that they can learn a lot coming here.
So at the end of this interview, let's ask the President about the future of the association and the conference.
Well, after we finish up the conference, we send some of the resolutions to New York and Brussels, to the appropriate offices, so they actually get to read what the delegates have been working on for the past week. The delegates go home to their home countries and to their home MUN associations, and they get to share their experience with other people, with other students, their families. And well, next year in February, the new executive board of BIMUN will be elected, and I wish them all the best of luck, of course. And as BIMUN has been evolving for the past 13 years, I'm very confident that it will continue to evolve in a positive direction.
And we hope that, of course, for this year's delegates and for next year's delegates and the executive board to follow. And as we always say, be a model, be united, and be BIMUN.